Welcome to the Agent Upgrade Podcast with your hosts Jasmine Krnjetin and Alan Corey, where we learn the strategies of top producing real estate agents so you have the tools to upgrade your own real estate career.
All right, time for a new episode of Agent Upgrade. Good to see you again, Jasmine.
Always a pleasure.
I am a little jealous, but also maybe I'm making light of the situation. But why don't you get everyone else up to speed on where you are and why you're there?
Okay, so I may have like the best COVID travel story yet, possibly.
I think it is.
So we came to Europe. I guess it's been about 4 weeks, 5 weeks now, maybe going on 6 weeks soon.
This is you and your husband, just couples trip.
Yeah, we decided we were going to go to London for a couple weeks. And then once we got to Europe, we were like, oh, this is so great. Let's extend our trip just a little bit. We'll go to Paris for a minute, check it out. So we went to Paris. I am double boosted, vaccinated. We have not, knock on wood, had COVID before. And so we were feeling like maybe we're just not really going to get this thing because we've been around this COVID for a couple of years and we haven't gotten it. And so I end up getting a very, very, very mild COVID in Paris. And so we're like, okay, well, I guess we're stuck in Paris for about a week plus until.
Well, you're stuck there because you couldn't fly home without a clean test, right?
You have to get, it's interesting because like you can fly right now, like you can fly to Europe as long as you have a vaccine card. You can move around Europe as long as you have a vaccine card, most countries, but you cannot get back into the US unless you have a negative COVID test, regardless of your vaccine card. And so we were in Paris, and then once I got, my negative test, we are back in London. We're supposed to fly home from London. Well, then my husband tests positive. And so we spent a week in London, and then we're like, okay, it's literally the night before we're supposed to go back. We're like, okay, let's go run, get a test. Both of us know literally just like a very, very mild cold. That's right. The level of our symptoms. So had we been at home, neither one of us would have actually tested and known that we had COVID. Anyway, Long story short, we find out that he is testing positive. So we reschedule our flight. And there is this thing here in the UK where they will give you a certificate that you've had COVID 2 weeks after you've had your first negative or first positive test, I should say. Okay. And so basically then we were like, okay, well, it's going to be another couple weeks. We're stuck in Europe. So we moved on down to Barcelona. And so we're going to spend a couple weeks here in Barcelona until we get our clear to fly home. And so here we are. We have some friends that have an apartment in Barcelona. And so we just decided to come here and hang out for a little bit.
So this originally was a 10-day trip. Was that right?
Yeah. We were just supposed to go to London for just a second.
And now you're 30 days in, or you'll be at least 30 days in, maybe, if not more. You still need that clean test to come home.
Yeah.
And you've hit London.
They say that that sometimes when you have like the super mild symptoms, it just takes a really long time to get, the negative test. Yeah. There is worse places to be stuck, I suppose.
London, Paris, Barcelona, a nice forced quarantine situation there. Yeah. Well, yeah. So it's 10 o'clock p.m.
10 o'clock our time. Yeah. I've gotten used to working the late shift. It's pretty funny because I'm always working, usually people will be like, oh my God, it's so late. I know it's 6 o'clock, and I was like, well, if you only knew that it's actually midnight for me, you would probably, but it doesn't matter because, we have a whole day to ourselves and then we work late at night. And it's fun. It's totally doable. So
in terms of like a rating 0 to 10? Is it like I'm sure there's some homesickness involved. It sucks having COVID and not being control of your life, but also you have to travel Europe in the meantime. What is this? A 10 vacation, a 5 vacation?
It's so good. It's really good. We have really not traveled at all. And we travel a lot. My husband and I, we love traveling. And so there is always like this feeling of like when you leave home, and it usually takes a couple weeks to break through like that inertia of homesickness. But then once you start pushing week 3, week 4, you've just kind of surrendered, and you're just like, you just learn to love the 3 pair of socks that you have, and you're just like, you kind of own your little corner of the world, and you just become really go with the flow and just ease and flow with it. So it takes a while to break through that, like the anxiety that some people have when traveling, and you can't quite get your balance, where it's like, oh my God, I gotta check my email. I gotta do this. I gotta do this. And then you kind of settle in, and you're like, I can check my email. It doesn't matter. Like, I can open up my laptop, work anywhere. I can kind of flow. You really have to kind of learn to flow in and out of your life way more when you're traveling. And so you kind of have to surrender to it, and then it becomes fun, because then you're not stressing about like instead of being like, oh my God, I've got this 10 o'clock meeting at night and I can't hang out with my friends. It becomes like, oh my God, I actually got to have 2-hour dinner with my friends, and now I get to go have, do some fun work stuff. So it's cool. I love it. But some people can't pull it off that way.
Like I said, you're living the digital nomad life. That's sort of the millennial way of doing things. It's tough for real estate agents. Every agent knows the best way to get business is to leave town. So if you were a licensed real estate agent, you'd probably have 20 deals, $1 million buyers calling you. That always happens when you go on vacation.
As you. And I saw this really cool website that where you can like have where you can like find agents to show homes for you. Yeah. And it's like $85 per showing. And I was like, yeah, if I was a real estate agent, I would be using this app a whole lot right now.
Yeah, totally.
Like, go open doors for me right now.
No, that's great. Actually, our last episode with Ross of Sphere, that CRM he created, I went ahead and signed up for it, and I'm testing it out with my team. But one of the things that I really enjoyed was, hey, if I'm going out of town, I can share my profile, all my contacts, my contracts. So an agent who is showing him can kind of get up to speed with his client. And when I get back in town, I can stop that sharing, and they don't have access to the information. I thought that's great, especially if you are a solo agent, or even if you're a team. That's a great kind of skill to have shared.
Awesome.
But speaking of different time zones, we've got a wonderful guest today coming from the Pacific Northwest, one of my favorite cities in Seattle, Kayla Preston. And I'd love to bring her on right now, and we'll pick her brain and how she's become one of the top agents out in Seattle, and see what she can share with us. Hey, Kayla, welcome to Agent Upgrade.
Hey, Alan. Hey, Jasmine. I'm fully expecting a Spanish version of this podcast by the time.
Yes, I'll get right on that.
Over to the States.
I love it. I love it.
That would be so awesome. Kayla, I got to say, we don't know each other, but I feel like I know so much about you, and that is thanks to your wonderful Instagram page. Like, it's so organized, where you've got your around town tags, your home sold testimonials, sports, your live music shows you go to, your dog Riley, where you're traveling. Like, I'm like, I want to work with this person. Oh, we're not 100% aligned in everything, but I'm like, oh, I like that show. I like that sport or whatever. Like, you do a great, and it comes off as professional. Like, every image is very polished and like a magazine, which I want to ask you all about. And also, it's not like in your face and bragging and like, look at what I'm doing. It's like, you're a real human and you're exploring Seattle. And I'm like, yeah, this person knows Seattle inside and out. So where did this, what's your system? Or is this sort of just by accident, or very cultivated and purposeful? I'd love to hear. And before we get started, it's Kayla J. Preston on Instagram, if you guys want to check it out while we talk through this.
That's right, Ellen. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's a little bit of a mix of cultivation and sporadic. I'm sure that further you scroll down the actual page feed, you'll think, okay, these photos aren't as professional. But with that said, I really gave a lot of thought to, okay, do I want to have just a professional page? Do I want to have just a personal page? Do I want to have two? Do I want to combine them? What felt the most authentic to me was to combine the two. And I'm not saying that there's a right or a wrong way there. I know several agents who have a personal page and a private professional page, and that works just great for them. For me personally, I find that a lot of the reasons clients opt to work with me is not just because I'm a professional and very talented at my job, but also because they might find something that I enjoy relatable to them in their personal life. So you'll see all my dog photos and my going out to eat and my traveling, just along with homes that I've sold, negotiation tactics, and helpful videos that I post as well.
So did you take a class, or you're on Instagram all the time, or is this something your brokerage, Every Door Real Estate and Seattle provides? What?
Yeah. So great question. It's kind of a combination of both of those items. So several of the posts, so lots of the ones that you'll see a more professional photo taken. I do have a marketing team that Every Door Real Estate does help me with. So they provide a couple of posts per week, a couple of graphics per month. And then I will also do some of my own posts. So you'll probably notice more of the personal photos that are on my page, and certainly my stories. So I have my stories that I post every day, but then my highlight reel, those are totally Kayla. So you could also see a pretty stark difference, but that's okay. I find, again, lots of my friends and my sphere of influence like to see both aspects of my life, professionally and personally.
Would you say that you get most of your leads from Instagram, or is this just one of many sort of lead generation tools you use?
It's certainly one of many lead generation tools. So I've become more diligent, and especially with the marketing team that's been helping post on my behalf. That's been roughly 6 months now. And while I haven't quite yet gotten a completely random lead that has found me through some hashtag, right? I know that is something that takes time, something where there's algorithms that can boost you up in the feed. I certainly have gotten more sphere and referral leads just based off of folks that have connected me to a friend of theirs on Instagram, or made me more top of mind, present, and maybe it's someone that I met 5 years ago or 10 years ago that we followed each other on social for all these years. And now I am the person that they find top of mind to help them with their real estate needs.
I'll say this is a refreshing post that the first time I've seen this, and I really enjoyed it. It's an Instagram post you made. It says, "How to support your friend's real estate business without buying a house." And this is great. I feel like every realtor, sorry to maybe let other people use the same thing, but the tips you mentioned on here, I don't know if you remember. Do you remember what they were?
It's liking their posts, sharing their posts, commenting on their posts. You'll have to remind me if there's
you nailed it. And share your social media posts to your story, comment on posts to show support, refer them to a friend who's looking to buy or sell, and share their posts on Facebook. Because a lot of times people don't even know, like, oh, I love you and I want to support you, but I'm not ready to buy a house. And it's like, well, you can just talk about me or share me, or that's the support I need. And I think that's really refreshing to put it on there and remind people that you don't have to buy a house to support me, kind of thing.
Exactly right. And, I find that with a lot of the people who are in my sphere and my friend group, right? We're constantly trying to support each other. We're not always going to be the immediate line of access to what's going to help them professionally, either financially, but there's other things that we can do to be a support system. And it's funny that you said that, because first of all, I don't come from a scarcity mindset, right? So anything that I'm posting or talking about, I want other agents or consumers to be able to take and help them with their business that way. So, that's why I'm so happy to be on here today. But I did have a couple broker friends of mine then share that post or mimic it in some way, kind of redo the language into their own speed to help them with their business and their friend groups.
That's awesome. I love it. I think it's also really, really important to to kind of find your own authentic voice. Like, even though we're all kind of saying the same thing, right? Like I follow a lot of friends who are in the mortgage broker side of things. And so we're all talking about rates and the Fed and the APR, but like everybody does it in their own unique way. And so I think even though like somebody may be copying what you are saying, if they just use their own authentic voice and to create that post as opposed to just copy pasting or, just plagiarizing completely. But we kind of have to help each other because there's only so many different things we can talk about in real estate before we run out of things that consumers want to hear. It's like, oh my God, if I see another rate post, I'm going to shoot someone.
You got it. That's spot on. Yes, we all have our own authentic voice to be able to put our tailor, our spin onto the same topic that every other agent or mortgage professional might be speaking of at the moment. Yeah. And I guess I'm kind of curious. So a couple things I want to find out. Like, what do you think is the right cadence in terms of the stories? Like I have some real estate agent friends who they will literally post like 8 to 10 stories a day. And then there is some that will actually just post like a few things here and there. And then I'm also curious, like, to hear you say, like, what do you think with like, there is a lot of people that are just like recording videos now, like just like me talking about whatever. And there is just so much of that in our feed that I feel like people are just kind of starting to tune out. People are not actually stopping or listening. They just see you talking about something and keep scrolling. So give me a little bit of your feeling on some of that kind of stuff that you've figured out.
Sure. Something that I've learned that's become quite helpful to the content that I post, especially on my story, is that by nature, people want to be heard. People are selfish. People want to share their opinion. So anytime that I can create a story or a post that asks a question or includes a poll or anywhere that someone can comment or vote or make their opinion heard, typically has a higher viewer level and higher content collaboration, right? Where people are engaging, because it's all about engagement with social media. So I really try to think of things, how can this be engaging, right? Even if it's something really funny that I see at a showing, that's something that is typically quite engaging.
That's a good one. Yeah. The creepy things you find in a basement, those are awesome.
You got it. So anything like that. And again, that's kind of authentic to my personality. While I'm, of course, a fierce negotiator, I also like to have a lot of fun. Like, the experience that I want my clients to think of real estate with Kayla is, hey, she worked her rear end off and we had a lot of fun while doing it. So I'd like my social media to kind of mirror that.
Yeah, a lot of the engagement posts that I've seen that actually gets me to engage is like, hey, what do you think this house is listed for? And it's like some photos, they do a walkthrough, and you're like, oh, I want to comment and see, or it'll be a voting, like thumbs up if you think it's 500,000, or smiley face if it's 600,000, and or what? How would you renovate this home, this way or that way? Like, you're forced to, play along. Let's play a little game together, and of course, the more interactions you get, the more comments, the likes and shares, the more your post is going to get fed through the algorithm to be shared with other people. So, if you can create that sort of engagement, I think that's huge to really get yourself promoted or organically through the system there.
I was listening to a book on one of our many train rides, and it was like this basically was like about how to become a really good storyteller. And so one of the things that he said is that, like, our brain, like, when asked a question or something to solve, like, how old do you think this thing is? Or, that kind of thing, like, the brain just cannot let go. It's going to start solving the puzzle. And so the more stories you create that kind of require that sort of an engagement, the more you're going to grab somebody's attention when you can get their brain going, like just thinking about it, because it's going to try and find a solution to whatever that, whatever the puzzle is, like those weird things when you see like, is this green or yellow? And you're like looking at it for 18 seconds, 20 seconds, like, is it green? Is it yellow? Like the brain just can't let go. So that's part of being able to be a good storyteller, I think. And that translates really well to social media, because ultimately, these are stories that we're telling, right? We're trying to be storytellers, if you will, on social media. And that's how we get engagement. So it's cool stuff.
I'd like to talk about the Seattle market. How long have you been a realtor in general?
I've been a self-employed real estate agent for 8 years.
8 years. Okay. And Seattle the entire time?
Seattle the entire time.
Are you born and raised in Seattle?
So I am was raised in a town called Mukilteo, about 30 minutes north of Seattle. I will call myself a Seattle local. I've lived in the downtown vicinity for 19 years, somewhere right around there. And there's very few of us left. There's, it's a big transplant city, which is great for so many reasons. I'm so glad that so many people have chosen Seattle as the place that they want to plant their roots. And there's been so many folks that were raised here that have moved away. So I've lived in Seattle my whole life, and absolutely love it here. So I've seen the tides turn a couple different times in the real estate market for sure.
So what advice would you give that? So you're very established. You do amazing numbers and closings and everything. 8 years in, top of your game. Maybe some people listening who are maybe moving new to Seattle, or maybe the Pacific Northwest, or I guess it could be a national advice too. What would you give sort of that newer agent who's really wanting to upgrade their career? What advice?
Absolutely. So a couple things. If it's someone who has moved to a new city, and whether they were a real estate agent previously or just starting a career in real estate, studying, just like we would with anything else, studying different towns, connecting with people in the community. I posted a video somewhat recently that was, things to research when you're making a move. And again, we can kind of tailor this down to things to research while you're moving and becoming a real estate agent, is connecting with the community. So walking through neighborhoods, looking up what are those best restaurants or cocktail bars, or again, whatever their line of interest is, following those folks on social media, joining Facebook groups that are neighborhood specific. And then, of course, just talking to other real estate agents about what's helped them in that specific community, what's important to them, so that they can really, again, be authentic to themselves while learning a lot about how to be successful in the new city that they may be moving to.
And one thing that I have also found, speaking of connecting with other real estate agents, I think that I have found that real estate agents in other cities and other areas are so much more willing to share their knowledge when they're in a Facebook group where there's 20,000 agents across the country, as opposed to like the little Seattle neighborhood. Everybody knows everybody and everybody's trying to do like, so I find like joining like groups that are like across like Facebook, like real estate agent, investor, mortgage bankers, like people are so much more willing to share when they don't think that they're sharing with their immediate competition. And so I would add that into the mix, not just the neighborhoody real estate stuff, but just like if you're looking for people that are doing things really, really well, like follow people that are all over the country because it translates pretty easily. Real estate, mortgages, back and forth, like what a realtor in Seattle does translates really good to what I can do as a mortgage banker here in Atlanta. So it's cool.
And the Agent Upgrade podcast on Facebook is a good place to start if you don't even know where those are, right? So I'll plug that in there.
Yeah.
It's actually interesting that you share that as well, because again, every broker, every mortgage lender operates their business a little differently. I come up from a place of abundance. So if any broker, whether they're local or national, is asking me questions, I want to be helpful and share my knowledge with them. I think that there's more than enough business to go around for the people who are willing to work for it. That said, prior to me being a real estate agent, I worked at Zillow.
Oh, fun.
Ooh,
And
boo.
Like it. We like Zillow people.
contributed to or is continuing to contribute to my success is when I worked at Zillow, I was the advertising sales gal in Seattle calling agents all across the country who are very successful or who were looking to grow a really successful business. And I'm just over in Seattle. I'm far away. They're going to share all their trade secrets with me. They're going to let me know what works and what doesn't work. And all the while, I'm just a sponge soaking it in back here, thinking of how I can bring this to my own personal business years down the line.
Okay, so sorry I booed you, but I don't really know how I feel about Zillow, but I know people either love it or hate it, and I see
pros. But Zillow has some good salespeople, though. Come on, yeah. I mean, seriously, like my sales, the sales reps that call you from Zillow, yeah, those are some good sales.
Thank you. I will take that as a compliment, as I was one of those.
Yes.
Here's the deal, right? Like it or leave it, love it or hate it. It's here. It's here to stay. So how can we incorporate even the things we don't like about it? How can we incorporate that into our sales pitch or what makes us the true professional versus a website? Right. It's kind of like I like to use a lot of analogies when I'm talking to clients or giving other real estate agents advice as to how to best communicate. Analogies tend to work really well. So using a similar analogy to a Zillow's estimate versus me, a person walking through your house, is kind of like the difference between going on WebMD or going to the doctor.
I would imagine that's very impactful when you meet with a client and you're like, oh, I used to work at Zillow and now I'm a realtor. So if everyone's like, well, this is my estimate says this, I'm sure you can back that up with, being a person is much better. But I'd love to hear what are some of those tips that calling around agents that they've told you. Is it sort of what they do on Zillow to generate more leads or just in general?
I would say in general. And this was always a two-way conversation. It's, hey, what's working, what's not working, and how can I help fill in some of the things that aren't working, right? So getting a CRM, a management database to be able to know who you need to call each day. That's one of the things that have, a lot of brokers find, including myself, find very helpful as to who am I following up with, who needs a check mark done, who's getting their listing report sent to them. Did someone buy their house a year ago or 6 months ago or 1 month ago that I need to follow up with? So having a CRM, super helpful. And then ultimately just not having fear of the phone. So I think that, from my Zillow days, I was making 100 plus calls a day. And a lot of broker, people get into real estate, they see $1 million listing and selling sunset and think it's just cute outfits and going to a cocktail party. Well, yes, sometimes that is a very fraction of our business. One of the bigger items is, hey, getting out in front of people, learning to hear the word no, or how do I combat the word no or objections with my real estate advice or my experience, right? So just not being scared to be out in front of people, doing the work, hosting open houses, especially for newer brokers. That's such a great way to gain new buyer and seller contacts. The list goes on, but I'll leave at least a few of those with the audience.
Yeah. That making the phone calls, I'm 100% like, if there was like a realtor boot camp, like if you could just take everybody, stick them into a 90-day, call 100 people a day for 90 days straight. Amazing.
Okay. So let's dig into that, because I think realtors, what I get is, what do I say and who am I calling? So how would you answer that, Kayla?
I would say offering value. So introducing yourself and seeing what kind of value that you can bring to their search. So whether it's a buyer or a seller, right? I will go off of a buyer. I'll use a buyer script, right? Hi, it's Kayla Preston with Every Door Real Estate. Saw you registered on my website about a month back looking for property in XYZ neighborhood. Is that correct? They're going to say yes, because I found them on my website. Say, great. Hey, are you still looking for a property? And they say, no, I'm not in the market, or already bought. Okay, great. If they already bought, we can still keep in touch with them. It doesn't mean that they're not going to be selling in a year or 2 or 5 years.
That's smart.
And if they
And if they haven't already bought, well, it's exploring why that is and what kind of value can you bring to help them get into a house. For me, one of my and my team's biggest selling points is our what we call off-market database. So that's homes that we know the seller is looking to sell. They either don't want to go on the active market for various reasons, or they might be listing in a month or 2 months, and telling those buyers, hey, I have some properties that you will not see anywhere else. If a broker had that opportunity, would you be interested? Who's going to say no to that in this market?
Right. I love that. I use that in my sales pitch. It helps that I have a team of 6 other agents, so we all have listings coming up soon and everything. We can talk every week about what who's looking for what, and if we can play matchmaker behind the scenes, that's amazing. You look like a genius. And sometimes, if I don't have it internally, I call other agents. Like I've done so many deals with either agents calling me saying, hey, Alan, I've got a buyer that's looking for this in this neighborhood. And I'm like, oh, I've got that. The price is this and everything. And vice versa. Hey, do you have this? And that matchmaker off the scenes makes both agents look like, wow,
amazing.
So much value. You talk about you led with, you got to provide value. I mean, there's nothing more valuable than that.
That's exactly right. And again, that's why these relationships in our business are so important, right? I don't want to burn any bridges. I want to be the broker that every other broker wants to work with. So that when I have that buyer that's looking for a really challenging or unique property in a certain neighborhood and price point, that I can go to all of my broker connections or pull stats on, hey, who's the top 3 brokers that are selling the most in that neighborhood, and call them and say, hey, I have someone looking. What do you have coming up? Do you have anything? And it makes both, like you just said, Ellen, both brokers look like rock stars in their client's mind.
Yeah.
I have something that I want to ask. No. You say your stuff first.
Everyone loves sharing their how did I find a house story. And I just know my clients are at a cocktail party saying, oh, Alan found us an off-market deal, right? Like whenever that happens, like they're gonna tell that story over and over again. You need to use Alan. He found this off-market deal. Like that is, that I can't think of a better referral than that.
Yeah. I think that for me, one of my favorite things is like, I'm always scouring all of my real estate agents, whatever they're posting on their stories. Like, okay, she's got a $350,000 in Stone Mountain. Who's looking for a house in Stone Mountain? I was like, hey, call your agent. There is this house in Stone Mountain. But one thing that I wanted to pick your guys' brains on is I find like, we've been doing a lot of database work, just shifting from one CRM to another. So I've been like looking at a lot of data. And so we have like over the last 6 months to a year, we have several hundred people that are pre-approved that have not bought a home yet. And I'm finding that like, this weekend there was a client, they made like this super strong offer, $100,000 over asking. The only thing they asked the seller was for like 3 days of due diligence, and the seller took another offer that had no due diligence. Like that's the kind of stuff that the buyers are dealing with still. And so after that, the agent was like, they're just done. They're not going to look anymore. And then another agent was like, yeah, I got a text from a buyer and they were like, yeah, we lost that. We're just throwing in our hat. We're just not doing this anymore. And I want to hear what you guys think. Like when every agent is going to have all these buyers that are pre-approved, that are kind of they're hanging out there for months or even a year. And how do we engage them? Do we call them? How do we have those conversations that say, I know it's tough. I know we've lost out on this house. You're brokenhearted, but we got to get you back in the game. And how do we do that? So Kayla, especially you, what are your ideas on re-engaging?
Sure. So one thing I'll kind of note when I'm working with a new client, which I'm sure we all do, is setting expectations, right? 99% of all problems are solved by setting expectations up front. So if I know that the location and the budget that they're working in is going to be very competitive or maybe very difficult, one thing is either talking through off market or changing the structure of, hey, we're going to make sure to only look at homes that are $50,000 or $100,000 or $200,000 less than your cap. right? Because we want to be in a position where we can be competitive. Otherwise, we're just going to keep spinning our wheels and it's going to be frustrating. And we want to make sure to only look at homes that will be a fit for you. Okay. If they're getting that buyer fatigue, which I think a lot of buyers are starting to feel or have felt these last 6 months, if they're getting that fatigue, it's really bringing them back to their own motivation, reminding them what they had told you in your initial consultation that was their motivation to buy. So one of the conversations I've been having with a lot of clients is we want to buy you into the market now before prices continue to go up. Okay. And maybe we're overpaying now by $50,000, but your interest rate might be a point or 2 points less than where interest rates are going in the next 6 months. So we want to help build your financial future by getting you back into this market.
I like that. I just want to piggyback on a couple of things, or go more in depth and and agree with what you said. But setting expectations up front, now I'll tell clients, hey, we're going to make 10 offers. Like we're not going to get the first 9 houses. I just want you to prepare going into this. It's going to take about 10 offers. And maybe I adjust that depending on how the market is. And then, so they're already mentally like prepared to make 10 offers because I honestly, after 10 offers, I'm exhausted too with that client. So it's like, let's just, hey, this was only offer number 6. I told you to take the offers. This is offer number 6. Don't give up, so you can kind of check in on that. And then I also say, like, I try everything to avoid, hey, we're overpaying, and never say that. That's what I personally do. But I rephrase that same sentiment by saying, how are we overpaying if there's 9 offers that were similar to ours and one was even better than yours? Like, that's the market value. Like, there's a difference between list price. There's a difference between appraisal price, but the market value is what someone's willing to pay. And there's multiple people willing to say a very similar price than you. Like, that's not overpaying. You got to get that the list price is the price that it's at. And that also starts with what you exactly said. Let's look $100,000, $200,000 cheaper than the list price, and assume we're going to have to pay $100K over. But you got to take away those feelings of you're overpaying or you're paying $100K more than it's worth, because that's not reality. That's to create a buzz. That's to create some, everyone, putting in offers. It's specifically designed to drive up the price. And, it doesn't work with every client, but if I say that repeatedly but guys, going in, I think this is a strong offer, but it's offer number 1. Just want to set your expectations. And then I also say, hey, when we win that 10th offer, I just want to let you know, we're going to probably screw over and upset 20 other people, just like we got screwed over and upset on the first 9. Like, it's just, that's how it goes. So just play the game. We're going to, it's like cold calling people. It's just how every no, you're closer to a yes. Kind of
you
thing.
got it. And you're so right about that. The term overpaying, certainly it's not overpaying when there's 5, 10, 15 other people that also say that that's the value. A value of anything is what someone's willing to pay for it. Right. You're spot on with that.
Yeah. And then I similar conversation, paying $50,000 now while interest rates are X is better than, paying $25,000 more when interest rates are Y or whatever. Like, and there's a stat in the Wall Street Journal recently that the last 12 months of home ownership, the average home value went from like 275 to 327, I think, across the United States, which is a $52,000 price jump. But if you owned a house, you basically gained $52,000 of equity. The average salary for the U.S. employee is $50,000. So if you're like waiting on the sidelines to save more or wait for home price, like you're losing ground the longer you wait, because the houses are making more money than the person with a 12-month full-time job, right? So it's just that perspective. Like, you got to get on the train, and it's not a boom bust cycle. It's not what we had before where everyone could get a mortgage. It doesn't matter what you got applied for. Mortgages are harder to get. It's harder to get pre-qualified. There's just not as many homes. We had 2.5 years of COVID where builders couldn't build, and home flippers, there was no foreclosures where home flippers can get, things from the courthouse steps, and supplies chains were disrupted for construction workers. Like, we just have a housing shortage. It's all supply and demand. And I don't see that ending in the next 2, 3, 4 years. Like it takes a year to build a house, to build a neighborhood. And some of these neighborhoods still are not being built that we all need.
I agree.
Exactly right.
I had a consultation this morning with a first-time home buyer, and he was like, we've got about 5% saved up, but we're thinking or maybe waiting until we have 20. And I was like, oh, hell no, you're not. I was like, no, just no, you're not.
You can't let them do that. They're gonna miss the boat. Like you just said, Alan, they're gonna miss it. And once it's missed, it's gonna be really hard to catch back up with how much prices are raising and appreciation value versus what people are earning every year of their salary.
Yeah. And it's that 20% down myth, dude. It's so persistent out there. It's so difficult to get people to snap out of it. Like,
I mean, I blame Susie Orman, Dave Ramsey for saying avoid PMI, and like, no, PMI is beautiful. Like you only have to put
$57 a month. Come on, people, come on.
And it's called refinancing.
Yeah.
Yes. Give it a few years, refinance, put more down, get a lower rate, just buy, get into the market.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the conversations that I'm having more and more with buyers right now, with the interest rates being where they are, is like just really making that clear. Like, this is not your forever rate. This is not your forever rate. It's 5 point something, but guess what? It's not your forever rate. Can you afford this housing payment right now?
Yeah.
Because really, for most people, of course, not extremes, but like the needle moved by a couple $100 a month, right? That's for the average consumer, right? They were expecting to pay $2,500, now they're going to pay $2,700, right? So most people have not gotten priced out completely, right? It's a shift. It's a little bit uncomfortable, but if the interest rates keep going up, then it's, if we end up at 7%, then we're starting to talk about like, $400 or $500 a month shift in the average monthly payment. Then that they're going to feel that. So it's much better. And then not to mention that plus the $50,000 in equity, right?
Kayla, do you think higher interest rates, like if we're in 7%, is that going to change demand in something in hot Seattle?
I don't have a crystal ball. None of us do. I will say that being in Seattle, we have a huge majority of tech jobs, right? We have Amazon and Microsoft and Google and Tableau and Zillow and Salesforce. And with anything that's happened with supply chain or even a recession or anything that we can think of is going to happen in the future, the tech jobs just continue to grow. They continue to find new avenues for more employment. We have no land here. There is nothing else to build on. So the rate in which people continue to be hired and move to Seattle is far outpacing the amount of homes that we have available. So while, of course, I do believe that, and we've already seen it just in the last 30 days, even, we've seen a slight shift with, instead of 20 offers on a house, maybe it's 5. I don't really see a 7% interest rate all of a sudden stopping our market from continuing to go up and from people to buy houses here locally. I'm just speaking to Seattle.
Well, I think that's similar to what I've seen in Atlanta. It's what I'm saying is, okay, if we have 7% interest rates, you're going to get 3 offers on your home instead of 15. Like it's still a bidding war. Like it's just less frenzy kind of thing, maybe. Exactly. But like it's still going to be a seller's market. You're still going to be having to pay higher than the list price and probably have really attractive due diligence and appraisal terms and things like that in order to get your offer accepted. But I don't necessarily see it as prices, the home values are going to drop and, everyone's overpaid, 2 years later kind of thing. I don't see that.
Exactly. Plus it's a part of, again, going back to that expectation setting, right? I never advise a buyer, hey, you're going to make a bunch of money and can cash out in 1 year with a whole bunch of equity. No, we know that most people stay in the house an average of 7 years. I typically advise folks, hey, if you're thinking about selling in 1 year, that's a big gamble. That's a big risk to take. But if you do plan to hold this property or keep it as an investment for even 3 to 5 years, I feel very confident with those numbers.
And I question renters when I say, hey, do you guys think that home values are going to go up? And they usually say yes. Do you think property taxes are going to go up? Yeah, I assume so.
Mm-hmm.
The inflation, utility bills are going to go up. Yes. Okay. So do you think the person who you're renting from, who owns the building, and their expenses are going up, do you think your rent's going to go up? Yeah, I expect my rent's going to go up. Right, exactly. But if you get a 30-year fixed mortgage, you're going to be paying the exact same for 7 years, and your rent's going to keep going up. And so your plans of saving more and saving up for a bigger down payment, that's not going to happen. And the worst is when the clients think that's going to happen and they go look at whatever their $500,000 homes and they're like, I want to unlock the next level. Like these homes don't work for me. I'm going to wait till next year, sign a new lease. And then those now they can afford what was $475 the previous year. And it's like your home, the size is getting smaller, or your location is a little bit further out than what you wanted than a year ago because you waited and everything sort of moved faster than you were able to save. Some get it, some don't. But like you said, providing value, educating the consumer is our role, and that's our job. And you can just only do so much sometimes.
I'm sure that we've all had many people come to us and say, I wish I would have listened to you a year ago. I wish I would have listened to you 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I have yet to have someone come to me, knock on wood, and say, Kayla, gosh, I'm really frustrated. I bought 2 years ago.
But,
yeah.
Oh, Kayla, you only made me $50,000. But yeah, it's interesting business, and I'm curious because being at Zillow, what is your thoughts on iBuying companies that and the effect it will have on the real estate profession?
Well, I know that the Zillow buy program is no longer with us, RIP Zillow buying process, but I do believe that tech firms and hedge funds will continue to be buying real estate because historically it's one of the best investments that anyone can make. I heard recently a quote that kind of scared me, that was 1 in 7 homes in America are owned by tech money, hedge fund money.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like those numbers. I think that it will, if those numbers continue to grow, it's going to force less and less people to be able to ever get to a point of being able to afford a home. And I want to live in a place where everyone can buy a home if they so chose to. We funny enough, when I worked at Zillow, I also worked for a company called Invitation Homes that, we bought 20, 40, 60 homes a week off of auction and foreclosure back in 2013, 2014. And that was a similar idea, right? Instead of flipping them, they were just using them as rental properties, and likely at some point started to sell off small portfolios. But I think it's going to continue. I think that the big money is there for those hedge funds and companies to continue to make money. Do I like it? I don't know if I like it, but it sounds like that's
so. How do we know?
Program that's going to stay.
How do you know when your offer is coming from a hedge fund?
Oh, typically it's a name of an LLC. It's a proof of funds, a cash offer that's on a bank statement for an LLC with tremendous amounts of money, and it's some contract that's not your regular contract that some corporate lawyer drafted up.
So you can tell. So you could, as a real estate agent, you could help stir your sellers to say like, hey, this is a hedge fund. We want to have a family here, maybe, or is it just too much money?
It's here's the offers. I don't know how you answer it, Kayla, but it's like, this is the pro and con. A lot of times you don't even know if the other offers, if it was presented through a real estate agent or something, who's behind the scenes, unless they did a love letter. But you can say this is a person's name and this is an LLC. I personally have not had a client who's like, I'm not selling to an investor, I'm not selling to a hedge fund. Like that's.
So we might get there. Like it has not been that long that we've been hearing about this in the news in the last year, maybe 2, that we've been hearing like hedge funds like, yes, cash offers, that's different, but like literally like feeling like, okay, there is like 1 out of 7 homes. That's a huge, huge number. That is the one thing that kind of, that's the one statistic that I've heard lately that's made me go like, wait a minute. Once we get this greedy, you know what happens. You know what happens. 2008 happens when there is a bunch of greedy people getting in on something. So we'll see.
Exactly. And, Alan, our job is to best represent our seller and their needs. I personally will typically, share with sellers, unless you ask me for those love letters, unless you ask me, I'm here. This is a business decision. It's emotional and it's business combined. And you hired me to get the best possible price and terms. At the end of the day, we're here to represent the seller and whatever their best interests are. And they ultimately are going to have the choice on which offer they intend to choose.
They want to go with. Yeah.
And I've seen that what I'm reading is some neighborhoods don't have an HOA, or all of a sudden forming an HOA. That's basically one rule that says you can't rent it out, or you can't buy the house within a name of an LLC, to kind of stop the investors from coming in. Atlanta introduced an Airbnb law where you're only allowed to have 2 Airbnbs, your primary and another home. But I think that's putting a Band-Aid on things, because investors can still buy and get long-term tenants. It's just, you just can't have short-term tenants. Like, it's no different there. I think it's going to take a national politician to do some law that says, you can only get so many mortgages in the name of an LLC, or it's interest rates are an extra higher if it's a residential house. Like, it's going to take some sort of national law, or at least state law, I think, to really curb it, because I see it's getting worse more than I do getting, better.
Agreed.
I mean, on the mortgage side of things, like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, they've gotten upped the loan level pricing adjustments for investor homes and for second homes. That was a big switch earlier this year, where second homes all of a sudden are pretty much the same pricing adjustments as investor homes. So I think Fannie and Freddie are trying to curb the enthusiasm. That, of course, hurts I don't really feel that the investors that are buying 3 to 4 properties, are the ones that we're really worried about here. I think it's the huge hedge funds that are just go in and buy hundreds and hundreds of homes versus, our friend that has 3 properties that he's trying to, cash flow and make a little bit of money on. So, I mean, I think Fannie and Freddie putting loan level pricing adjustments, maybe it's curbing it a little bit, but not.
I mean, I see companies like Open Door and maybe Orchard, Knock, these things that want to do the iBuying and Zillow. I think they're going to run into the same problems. And it's just, maybe I'm part of the problem too, but I sold 6 houses to Open Door, and what they offered me was 50% to 100% more than I could get on the market. And that's not just like a ignorant homeowner. That's a local real estate agent saying, you're going to offer me this for this house? Like, yeah, take it all day. And so now I'm just waiting like 6 months to see what they end up doing with it, because I'm like, that is insane. It makes no sense. But we'll see. It's going to be interesting how this all plays out. All right. So Kayla, how would you like, any final thoughts or anything to, how can people reach out to you? Anything you'd like to say to the Agent Upgrade audience before we wrap this up?
Absolutely. Yes. So please, as Alan mentioned, follow me on social. It's at Kayla J. Preston, Every Door Real Estate in Seattle, Washington. I'm just sending out so many good vibes to the new and seasoned brokers out there. Just remember, our job is to work. Our job is to make dials. Our job is to go on appointments. Our job is to show our value and our worth, and ultimately help people with their dream, whether it's buying, selling, or investing in real estate. There's so many different avenues of business. You don't need to buy leads through Zillow or Trulia. If you do, that's totally great. But there's so many free things that you can do. So just remember that.
Kayla Preston, Open Every Door Real Estate, Seattle. Thank you for joining us. Follow her at Kayla J. Preston on Instagram, and you'll be inspired. She's doing it right on social media. Thanks for sharing all your knowledge, and congrats on all your success. And we're all richer for it. So thank you for sharing your knowledge and being an open book today, Kayla.
Thanks,
Thank you.
It was great being on. Appreciate you.
Thank you for listening to the Agent Upgrade Podcast. If you are an agent looking for a new mortgage lender, start with Jasmine at jasmineteam.com. If you want to learn about real estate investing and working with investors, check in with Alan at thehouseofac.com. See you next time on Agent Upgrade.